Maybe a fairer comparison is to look at India compared to other large, complex societies, and China is a good example. India has the great advantage of a democracy, which ultimately I think is the most sustainable political system that we know of. But it doesn't have the advantage of accountability of elected representatives. China, in a curious way, despite not having a democracy in the political sense, has a very high sense of accountability on the part of its leaders. That isn't so for all authoritarian regimes, but it is so for China. And they have created a culture of accountability. I think India can create a culture.
I'm slightly baffled.
I think India can. You can come back to that if you want to.
Well, we don't have time.
I think India can create that culture. There's no reason why democracy should not have a culture of accountability with it. It just means that middle-class voters especially have to hold people accountable for what they promised and to see if they deliver. And it can be done.
All right, well, we're going to talk more about China and accountability over coffee, but we can't do it now. The authoritarianism that underpins that approach to managing a society feels uncomfortable to us.
Yeah. We are a parliamentary democracy, not in exactly the same mold as Britain or the United States, certainly.
No, I mean,
we are a parliamentary democracy, and an elected government makes decisions which it feels are in the best interests of the country today and for the future. And we are accountable for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a democracy of sorts. You don't have a genuinely free, truly liberated press.
Not in the British sense.
No, well, not in any... I mean,
but in the...
Much as I'd like to take credit for the notion of a free press, it's not a British idea.
I didn't mean it entirely as a compliment, but as a description. The freest possible media is not the only liberty we aspire to. I do think it's a good idea, by the way. It appeals to my ideals, but it's not the only liberty you aspire to. You do aspire to a liberty of being able to walk the streets freely, particularly if you're a woman or a child at any time of the night. You aspire to the liberty of living in a city that's not defined by its most disorderly elements. You aspire to the liberty of having an opportunity for an education and a job regardless of your race or your social background. And you aspire to a liberty of practicing your own religion without fear of bigotry or discrimination. Those are very important liberties in many societies, and they're lacking in many societies. Well, I think one of the very important lessons of the last 50 years is that traditional concepts of welfare and social expenditure and government intervention have led to a weakening of private initiative and personal responsibility.
You mean you're a bit more ruthless, is that what you're saying?
No, we are achieving a paradox of active government support for personal responsibility, rather than active government support to take over personal responsibility or community responsibility.
Do you believe in the concept of a safety net?
If you provide help for someone who's willing to study in education, to study hard, if you provide help for someone who's willing to take up a job and work at it, and make life not so easy if you stay out of work. If you provide help for someone who wants to own a home, and we are very generous in our grants for home ownership, which is why we have 90% home ownership. And amongst the low-income population, more than 80% own their homes. It transforms culture.